Welcome to the Thriving Farmer Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Kilpatrick. Our mission is to inspire, educate, and celebrate sustainable farming. We believe that you can build a profitable, sustainable farm that gives you true farm freedom. Join us as we talk to farmers, innovators, educators, and entrepreneurs to glean their top takeaways in business and life. Hey farmers, Michael here. And this episode, we interview Alex from Juniper Farm outside of Ottawa. And Alex was a fun interview. He's been running his farm for 13 years now, and we talked about his background of being in the movie industry, moving into planting trees, and finally finding fulfillment in farming. And we talk about his farm and the varied aspects of it. They sell to restaurants and they sell to a on-farm store as well as grocery stores. So it's a great interview. We talk about everything from team management, and they have a team of 15 now on the farm because not only do they have the vegetable production, they have some animal production as well as a kitchen which produce ferments as well as some prepared food. So we talk through all of that as well as just, managing a farm. So I think this interview, we deep dived into equipment for larger scale farms. We interviewed and talked more about the biodynamic side and his quest for soil health. He has a very long rotation on his farm, multiple years in cover crop and then 1 year in vegetable. So that was really cool to see how he was implementing that, as well as just the strategy they use to have a core team that manages the farm and then more of seasonal help beyond that. So really cool interview. I know you're going to enjoy it and definitely want to check out Alex's Instagram. He mentions it at the end, so stay around at the end to grab that. Now, I also wanted to read a few reviews from you, my loyal listeners, have left. So AK Toddler Mom on October 3rd left a review, says, so helpful for small farmers, 5 stars. Oh, well, that means a lot. Thank you so much. She says, I listen to a lot of farming podcasts, and this is the best one in production now, in my humble opinion. Well, we appreciate that. Michael does a great job of bringing in folks with ideas and experiences that are useful to me as a small beginning stage market farmer. I also love the positive attitude and the embrace of family and work-life balance that underlies most every episode. So many of us are out in the fields working alone many days, and this podcast offers great ideas, encouragement, and company. Thanks, Michael, and all the folks contributing their time to make my farming life better. Yeah, and so absolutely, thank you so much for that review. And again, shout out to the guests because, again, I'm one side, but the other side of the microphone is farmers that are sharing their time to help me bring this. And another review is from Prepper Nurse 80. She says, valuable information, 5 stars. For a novice farmer, this podcast is perfect. Tons of valuable, detailed information. I listen during my commute to work. Awesome. Again, thank you for that. And again, thank you for listening. If you haven't left us a review, please do. It helps us make sure that this podcast reaches more people every single week. And, we just had our best month ever, September, for downloads. So it was a fabulous month for us. And we now have over 75,000 unique downloads for the show. So again, thank you for your patronage and enjoy this interview with Alex. Alex, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thanks, Michael, for having me.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about your farming operation.
So our farm is Juniper Farm. Myself, Alex Mackay-Smith, and my wife, Juniper Turgeon, own a 200-acre property in Wakefield, Quebec, in Canada. Mm-hmm. And we currently serve probably over 40 or 50 restaurants, as well as have an on-site farm store. We also do processing, sauerkraut production, and that's the basic gist of it.
All right, cool. So you've got the 200 acres, and how many acres of that is actually farmed?
We farm currently in active production about 6 acres a year, and we're a certified organic and a biodynamic vegetable farm. So obviously we have many pasture that is in rest or in cover crop or for animals as well. So that's probably another 15 acres. So 6 acres in production and 15 acres kind of in rest and other use.
Very cool. So how long of a rest do you normally give a field?
It's changed over many years, and we've kind of landed on a rotation of 2 years, 3 years, so 2 years in rest. It seems to me the way to maximize getting a fantastic clover cover crop established that also gets pastured by our chickens. And right when we do the plow down to get ready for the following year is when we get the maximum amount of nitrogen fixing happening. If I go to 3 years, I find that the clover crop starts to diminish in its nitrogen availability. So yeah, we're into a 3-year rotation now.
Okay, very cool. All right, so when you said plow but down, do you actually do a turnover plow, or is it more of a rototill? How do you turn that under?
Again, we've been doing this almost 14 years now, so many different incarnations of this. Now we actually have gone to a traditional plow after the 3 years is up, or the year before we go into production. And yes, plow and disc and C-tine or S-tine where necessary to really get midsummer when the season is the hottest and we're able to flush out as many weeds as possible, and then sow down. And right now I'm looking at it out my window here at our oats and pea crop that we put in to last through the fall and create a beautiful cover crop that'll will die down over the winter, and we'll be planting right into that in the spring without having to till again.
Oh, wow. So that is that every year you start with basically a clean field with just, some cover crop remnants on it. So that must be really nice.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic. I love the way it works, and it gives me deep satisfaction to see those cover crops growing, and they're like my crystal ball into the future. Yes, we all have to look right at our garden and see what problems are having in this current year, but actually my eyes tend to be a lot more on all those cover crops and what are they doing? What are they showing me? So I can see what needs to happen, what I need to do to get that field producing in a fantastic way. So yeah, they give me great joy.
Interesting. All right. So I bet this ties into the biodynamic side of this as well.
Very much so. Do you have a specific question in mind?
Just tell me more about the biodynamics.
Yeah, of course. So we've been a biodynamic farm since the beginning. And that's, like I say, it's about 14 years we've been doing it. And I've evolved into it because there's a lot to learn, a lot of observations and a lot of intuitive learning that happens within biodynamics. So I would say if we're talking about cover crop in particular, the greatest asset it gives to our farm is an ability for those plants to communicate with what is happening deeper down in the soil and bringing it to the surface so that the season when we do grow the vegetables, they're accessing a more complex nutrient base, more complex minerality, and therefore really giving the flavor of the terroir of Juniper Farm. And what I find fascinating is, yes, you see biodynamics in vegetables, and it's quite common in the vegetable world in Europe. However, in North America, it's a little less common. However, in wine production, it's known. People will easily say, biodynamic wine, it tastes great, or sommeliers know all about it and have a real finger on that pulse of what biodynamics is. And the reason I believe they do is because there's sommeliers. There are people who spend their life learning to taste. And of course, if your palate is that advanced, you're going to taste the difference when you start to work with real soil quality. Now, I don't know many sommeliers for carrots. I bet you if they were out there and carrots maybe got you drunk, then potentially there would be a whole world of sommelier carrot tasters out there.
I think we could probably say Dan Barber would be the closest thing to one.
I would completely agree, and I have amazing respect for that man. I got a chance to meet him when I went there to eat, and it was a life-changing experience for Juniper and I about 6 years ago. And it was, yes, I eat fresh carrots, fresh radishes from the ground all the time. And sitting in that dining room amongst the art on the plate and the atmosphere that's created and the intention that goes behind that food, I have to say I had one of the best radishes I've ever had at that dinner. So yes, I think you're right. It is happening. Not to say it's not happening. It's just not as common as in biodynamic wine and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and if you're actually not familiar, we're talking about Dan Barber, who has 2 restaurants. He's got one it's a Blue Hill at Stone Barn, and he has a Blue Hill in the city. But I would think the one at Stone Barns is so much more famous, and I think that's the experience you probably want to go for if you're going to spend that kind of money on a meal.
Definitely worth it. And another great story, since you're talking to all these experienced farmers. That night that I went there, And my wife and I just decided to go, and luckily got a reservation through some connections, through some chefs here in Ottawa. And we showed up. We're sitting at the bar having a drink before we go in for dinner. And who's sitting at the bar? Elliot Coleman.
Did that happen to be December when you went there?
Yeah, it was during the Young Farmers conference that they have. That's correct.
Oh,
but
fabulous!
We actually, it was a surprise. We didn't even know it was happening. It just was all coincidence.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, I ended up seeing Elliot a couple months ago at the Frozen Ground conference that Sandy Arnold and he put on, and it was always great catching up with him and seeing what he's up to.
Definitely.
All right, so that was kind of a long introduction, but it was fabulous. What was your background before you started farming?
Oh, yeah. So quite eclectic. I grew up in Montreal, so I'm a city kid. I got into working in the film industry at one point. So that was a big part of my life. I moved to Toronto, which was sort of the epicenter of Canada for film. And I worked in film doing lighting and gripping, and climbed up the ranks in that. And it just didn't fulfill my soul life. I was needing more. So I actually got a job offer to do restoration ecology, so planting native trees and shrubs in sort of degraded areas of the city, and instantly felt much more like, it was a major pay cut, but it was incredibly rewarding. And so I did that for a number of years, maybe 6-7 years. And there was one thing that happened. So I'm late to farming, okay? Like, I did not grow up on a farm. I'm a city kid, right? But at this job, my boss had a little garden in the backyard. And in his garden, he had cherry tomatoes growing and I think some raspberries. And I started going into work, and I've been working with them for a while. And I'm working with living things. I'm working with trees, and I'm working with shrubs and different kinds of native flowers. And I'm planting them all day. But the part that got me the most excited was walking up and stealing cherry tomatoes from his plants at the beginning of the day and putting them in my lunch, like cherry tomatoes, not the plants. And and I just would put them in my lunch and I'd eat them, and the satisfaction of that fresh food, it just was like a light went off in my head, and I knew this is what I had to do. So shortly after that, it kind of was a long journey because I actually thought I needed to cook and work with food. So I started working as a cook in Toronto and started to want to figure out how to make sauces, how to make food from scratch. Like, where does this nutrient that feeds us come from? So I continued to do that. And again, it wasn't quite enough. I took the really long road, didn't I? And I was like, okay, now I have to see how this stuff is grown on a farm. And then I worked on a farm, did a woofing stint at a farm called Everdale, which is near Toronto. It's an environmental education center and farm. And I did that. That was about 16 years ago, and worked there and fell in love with it. And Juniper and I had met in Toronto, and I came back and I said, hey, you want to be farmers? And she's like, yeah, let's do it.
That's awesome.
And then we went and learned from a bunch of farmers, and here we are today.
Very cool. Very cool. So now that you have more mature farm, what does a typical day look like for you?
Yeah, so a mature farm is a really interesting way to put it. And my day is actually made up with a lot of meetings. We have a staff of almost 15 on the farm. Okay. And we can get into this after, but everyone sort of holds a different responsibility. So there's a constant dialogue happening. So morning meeting, wake up, usually, I'm up at about 5:30. I head down there to the hub where everyone meets. I get the board organized on what the tasks are for today. Like let's call it Monday morning, what the tasks are for today, what the tasks are for the week, and what are the long-term tasks. And I do this all on a whiteboard so I can get my head around it and everyone can have a visual on it. Then we have our morning meeting, get through everything in the day, whether there's things that need to be harvested, tasks that need to be taken on. Then potentially I will be, on the tractor for a while. I tend to do I actually tend to do most of the bed prep on the farm. Okay. I'm the guy who does the final bed prep. So kind of like a chef on a pass, that's the way I see it, is, serving the food across at the last minute. There you go. Okay, we're about to sow the seeds. All right, it's done. And I like to be that bed prep person just so I can see what's happening in the soil, feel the texture of it, make the call, I also have a great view from the tractor on what's happening all around me. So whenever I can, I try to be the bed prep guy. So that can take a lot of time in the spring. Again, it depends on the season, what my weekly or my daily tasks are. Another thing I can do is I can always be on the phone ready at any moment when I'm on the tractor. Whereas if I have my hands in the dirt and I'm really in that scenario, it's a lot harder to like be able to respond to my clients who are all the chefs who have, needs at all hours of the day, and be able to, and all the various other workings, because now we can all work from our phone as if it's our office. So just being available, it puts me in a really great place sitting on the tractor. Other than that, it's pretty much putting out fires when necessary, problem solving. And then the part I love the most is always holding the vision for the future of what our farm is, always having those in all those meetings, always leaving a meeting with my staff, depending on the situation, of what is the possibility, like where can we go with this, rather than kind of that's not working scenario. Anyways, that's kind of answered your question a little more than it had to, but there you go.
No, that was great. Okay, so tractor, what's your favorite tractor that you've got?
Okay, well, I really love the Kubota payment plans, to be honest. So I'm a new tractor guy, and I just love throwing down, being like, okay, that's it. We're getting a brand new tractor, do the payment plan, budget it out, and know that tractor pretty much is going to work 90% of the time, 95% of the time for the first 5 years, and never have to worry about it. Our seasons are really short here, and they only get shorter, like even compared to Ottawa and Wakefield. We're in Wakefield, only 30 minutes north, and we're in the hills, and it's 5 degrees colder than Ottawa. So our seasons drop quickly. So we have a very short window to get things done, and I don't need to be messing around with machinery. I'm a Kubota guy.
Interesting. Yeah. So it's because it's all about that opportunity cost. I mean, if you're spending an hour fixing a piece of equipment when you should have been seeding $12,000 worth of carrots, that's a huge problem.
Bingo. And the other thing is, it's not even just the fixing of it. It's actually going and getting the parts and waiting for the parts. That's the part that takes so much energy and so much time. The actual fixing, it's only an hour and a half. I can get my mechanic, like one of my guys who can hold the mechanic part to do it. But it's the running around and getting the right part and then getting the wrong part and then having to send it back. And you've lost 3 days, and it's a long weekend. Oh my gosh, we lost 5 days. Now you're really missing out on those opportunities, like you were saying. Yeah,
and I actually, one other thing is the stress. Is if you have an old tractor and you're always wondering, will that thing start today? That's also, and just like being broke down for 5 days is incredibly stressful as well. So yeah. I mean, they say it's stress that will kill you. So
that's right. And and I have had old tractors, and when they're working, I feel great. I'm like, I got a sweet deal on this one. Oh yeah, this Massey Ferguson was only $1,500. I'm loving life. But then when it's not working, you're not loving life very much.
Exactly. Yeah. So I actually never could get quite into the Kubotas. And when we were farming, the John Deere had the 60-month payment plans.
Okay.
So we actually went through a couple John Deeres with that. But then we actually had to finance a tractor because we bought a used John Deere, a 5325, and we fitted it out for a vegetable tractor with, narrow wheels and, all that whole thing. We actually got our customers to finance about half of it.
Amazing.
So yeah, that was anyway, that was the way we tackled that, and we ended up with I think a 1-year-old tractor at about 2/3 of the cost of brand new. So
yeah, we did get a pretty good score on our M7500.
Yeah,
and it came with something that's probably even a bigger score, and it was folks who are starting a farm in the area, and something big they're Australian. There was a big emergency and they had to go back to Australia, and they're just trying to get rid of everything. And the tractor was only a year old, and it was exactly what I was looking for. And on the back of it, and the reason why I went to see it, because I saw an ad on Kijiji, sort of the eBay equivalent in Canada. Yeah. It was for a Chelly spader.
Oh.
So that's why I went there. I wanted the spader, and there it is sitting on my future tractor, which I ended up picking up their lease and getting a killer deal. And yeah, it couldn't have been better. But okay. Yeah, that was lucky.
Now, spader, do you still use a spader?
Oh, yeah. So that bed prep tool I'm telling you about is actually how I prep almost every bed on the farm if I can. I can get in when it's wet. If I play my cards right. Sowing can be a little challenging, but still I can get in about 3 weeks before most other farmers because of the spader. I've learned to rig it up in such a way that it's my last pass. I don't even need to finish the bed after that. Yeah. And my soil does vary. Like I do have more areas that are a little more clay and areas that are a little more sandy. So it's not that I'm in pure sand or anything. And that for me as a biodynamic farmer and the integrity of the soil is so important. It's a no-brainer for me. The hard part about the spader is that, as we know, it does, some of you know, or if you don't know, it moves very slowly. And it's the equivalent of having 6 people walking down a row and basically forking and flipping, okay? So a gentle kind of way of working the soil where worms aren't getting chopped up. It goes, you have to have it in a creep gear, and it does tend to be slow to finish a bed. But the time you're saving from all the other pre-prep you need to do to a bed to get it ready, it makes up for it. And of course, the quality of the soil and the depth you can put your hand into the soil is unreal, or your arm actually.
Yeah, really straight, nice carrots.
Oh, very, exactly.
Yeah, I see a lot of people struggle with good carrots, and they're like, well, we had a discussion a couple weeks ago, do you thin your carrots? And I was like, well, you never should have to thin your carrots if you do your bed prep, your weed control, and your seeding correctly.
That's correct. Yeah, we know we've never thinned a carrot in our life on this farm. Yeah.
All right, let's move to a little bit different direction here. And you've kind of covered this a little bit about, task management. You got the board. What other systems have you set up to ensure you focus and tackle the most vital priorities?
Okay, so morning meetings are key, and we do them every single day. There is even a short afternoon meeting. So that's like right after everyone's lunch. We call it a standing meeting, just to make sure everyone's on the same page and those that maybe aren't as experienced on the farm off to the right place. So those are huge. Getting into more concrete stuff, we did create a software for our farm, which is called Harvest Board. It's something we're actually offering to other farms as well and should be ready relatively soon in the next couple months. But we've done it for our farm. We've been using it for almost 3 to 4 years. And it is a way of doing all of our sales online and it integrating into a pick and pack list that then integrates into our invoicing. So before we had that, we were big whiteboard, every vegetable we grow, every client we have, little boxes for everybody, all of it written down and can be changed if there's a change on the harvest or if there needs to be an adjustment, we would have to circle it. And that system was what it was, 10 years ago. That's what we had to work with. And it evolved into something we realized we needed to invest money in and make this actually doable. And now we have a system that takes out so much of that headache. And it's been a game changer for us. It's allowed us to grow for way more restaurants and way more diversity of crops and not have to offer only cases of things. Be able to offer, you want 7 bunches? Go ahead. You want 4 bunches? I don't care. Like it all gets tallied into our chart anyway. So the harvesters, all they need to know is you have 189 bunches of carrots to do, even though that could be going to 40 restaurants.
Okay, so quick pricing question there. Do you then charge more for the individual bunches compared to the case price for those chefs?
Yeah, that's been evolving actually. Good question. Yes, we do. And so it's the chef's choice or the retailer. Actually, we don't do it the retailers. I'll explain that in a minute. But with the chefs, yes, they can choose if they just want 3 bunches of cilantro. Yeah, it'll be $3 a bunch. If they want 12, the price drops. If they want 24, it drops again. If they want 48, even more. So yes, that's what we've done. And for the retailers, we tried that this year, and I think this would be good knowledge for other people to take on. Dealing with retailers is a whole nother beast, and they don't, especially like the health food stores, unless you have big contracts, with the big grocery stores, which is a lot harder to get anyways. But the small guys, they want to be able to order whatever amount they want. So we switched it and said, and brought up our minimum order that they need to order $150 even to get in the door. But we're doing all bunches at, let's say, $1.95. Okay. So what I've done is I've just adjusted my bunch size to make that accurate. And that's been super helpful. And I've realized that retailers are all looking at the price. Sorry, I'm going on a bit of a tangent here, but if you think about priorities, if I think about a chef, the chef's priority is flavor, number 1, quality, number 2, price, number 3. For a retailer, it's the opposite. Price, number 1, quality number 2, flavor last.
Oh, very interesting. I had never thought of it that way.
That's what I've come to terms with. And so that's how I approach my clients. So when I talk to chefs, I'm not trying to be like, yeah, I have the bulk rates. They can do that if they want, but I'm not trying to talk price. I very rarely talk price with chefs unless it's huge institutions. Mm-hmm. I'm usually just talking about the amazing flavor on most things and the quality, like how it looks and how it can present.
Yeah. Okay, let's go down that tangent because I'm interested here. So when you're growing for flavor, obviously the biodynamic, the soil prep, that's helping. But then how are you picking varieties? Are you constantly trialing new varieties? Are you just always looking for flavor in the description? Or how do you manage that?
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do, sure, for varieties and trying to pick the kind of quality and flavor that we're looking for. To be honest, I think a lot of things we grow have the potential to be amazing flavor, but I actually think our soils are not that complex and not that healthy in general. Mm-hmm. That I think the more healthy our soils get, the more flavor is going to come out. But yes, there's some varieties that I have given the big axe to because it's like, okay, that looks beautiful, has no flavor. Certain tomato varieties for sure. I've done that with. When I pick, I really have some standbys that work for me over the years, and I continue to use them. But yeah, I don't necessarily trust everything I read in the catalogs for flavor until I really experience it myself. I don't know if it's a decision maker for me.
Gotcha. So then you're just bringing the trials on farm and you're just trying everything all the time.
Yeah, I think you could say that. Yeah.
Gotcha. For winter squash, do you guys do any winter squash, and what have been your top takeaways there for flavor?
Yeah, so we have done winter squash since the beginning, and we've tried all sorts of varieties. Obviously, yield does play a big role in that one because we can literally have our yield cut by a quarter if we do blue Hubbards, too many blue Hubbard squash because they just get destroyed by the cucumber beetle in our climate. So I have to choose ones that can actually grow, as we are in a bit of a shorter season. So for us, the butternuts are always the most popular across the board. Also, we really specialize in the winter luxury pie pumpkin.
Oh, interesting.
Do you know that one?
Yeah, we used to grow it. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, so it's funny because we have a farm store and they don't look the prettiest. They have the bumpy skin and all that, but we kind of have some processed items we do sort of seasonally. So we do pumpkin donuts, not ongoing. It's just in the fall. And we also, for a couple like markets and festivals, the sort of things that we do. Also, we do pumpkin pies. We've started that this year. So we're looking for the highest flavor pumpkin we can. And the biggest value, I find they have the most amount of meat on them, those winter luxury. So we grow those, and it's sort of become a little bit of a staple on our farm, the pie pumpkins.
Very cool. Very cool. What's the hardest thing you've ever done as a farmer?
One, to single out an event is challenging. I think the hardest thing continuously for myself as a farmer is that there is no one else to blame and learning to problem solve under heavy stress. When we enter as humans into a stressful situation, it's so hard to see clearly. And I think learning to see clearly and step away and look at the big picture has probably been the greatest challenge in what can sometimes feel like the chaos of farming.
I know, I absolutely agree with you. And, you know, one of the courses, we just actually this last month put together a mini course for farmers, and it was all about how to save 5 times an hour on your farm, 5 hours a week on your farm, time freedom course. And the reason we feel like that is so important, and most of the course is about decision-making, time management, and delegating. Because we've realized that farmers, they get overwhelmed so quickly. And if they can't figure out how to get everything out of their head onto a piece of paper and then quickly sort that to, you know, if it's important or not, or if it's urgent or not, they just spend their time just like almost twitching, going around their farm because they're like, a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of this. And like half those things they should never have touched. Yeah, that's why. And I'm looking forward to getting the feedback from the first people we sent through the course. But it's, I'm really excited because I think this one thing can really help farmers, again, with that critical thinking aspect, which is what you just said is the hardest thing that you can do on a farm.
That's correct.
Yeah, it's not necessarily the difference between the Bolero and the Napoli carrots, which actually does make a difference anyway. But
Bolero.
Yes, yes. But it's the aspect of where to plant those, when to plant those. Is your soil actually correctly prepped for those? What's your weed control on those? Because those are all key decisions which are going to make or break you as a farmer.
You're right. And I say that to my staff all the time. I go, the hardest thing, and I didn't really say it in these words exactly, but the hardest thing is prioritizing. Mm-hmm. What do we do first? And that's usually where the puck drops for me as the owner operator. I have to be there for those decisions. Maybe not on the micro level, but on the macro level. Like, are we planting squash this week, or are we going to be prepping the greenhouse? That decision has to fall on me, just because of the many years of experience of doing this so many times and watching the weather. There's so many factors. It's like, it's so complex what's happening and how your mind has to work. And if you get stuck so much in the details, you can't make a good, informed decision on what the priority is.
Okay, so to that point then, one of the things we like to see is we like to try to empower our team to make some of those decisions. And as you said, you have to retain some of those decision making because you've been there and done it for so many years. But do you try to, to help your team learn that decision making? Definitely.
And 3 words for that: meetings, and more meetings. I remember hearing once, actually, and I don't know if it's a myth or not, and you probably heard this too, but supposedly there's some mythical farm somewhere in Europe that supposedly they plan for 4 hours and work for 4 hours every day. And they get everything done. They plan it to the minute. Wow. Anyways, I've actually heard that. I don't know if it's true. Even if it's not true, it's always been something in the back of my mind that, oh, how far can you go? And if you were to plan with that intense detail, right, exactly what you were saying before, saving 5 hours a week, how much can you save and how organized can you be? So yes, that is, the meetings really, really allow for that time for everything to be sorted and that person to head off and do their tasks and know what's happening first and know who needs to be in what, doing what, when, and then what's happening next. That right there is very helpful. Now, to be honest, I've noticed with so many staff over the years, and some who stay for 6 years, some who stay for 1, that it really just takes time. It takes season after season to really get people to feel like they can make those bigger decisions. And I have to allow them to make mistakes or successes. And I can't micromanage it all the time. Like, yes, I make those bigger decisions, but if I can let go of them, that's wonderful. And I do sometimes strategically just to let them learn from it, from that experience. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that is great. I think what you said right there is you just kind of have to let them fail sometimes.
That's right.
You have to remove the safety net.
100%. Like, you don't, okay, so how did we who've been farming for, let's say, more than 14 years. Okay, I'll give it that number. Why do we know a little more than other farmers who have only been doing it for 3 or 4 years? Because we have to watch a mistake for an entire season. It's not like owning a coffee shop where, my coffee, I roast, or whatever, a coffee roastery, and I roasted those beans the wrong way. Okay, get more beans in, we'll roast them again tomorrow, right? You plant all those onions a certain way, guess what? You can't go grow those seeds again. You don't have time, especially in a short season.
Yeah.
So you have to watch that problem or the way that you planted them the wrong way for the entire year. So next year, you'll never make that mistake again. And so really, I've only had 14 years under my belt. That's maybe a few mistakes a year. It's only like about 30 things I've learned. Imagine if you were, think of how many oil changes a mechanic has done. Thousands, right? Yeah. I've only planted carrots in a season 13 times.
Wow. Yeah. So I'll give you 2 mistakes. The first one was not being sure that everyone knew what end of the garlic clove to plant up.
Yeah, I didn't make that one again.
It was like one crew. And so like 20% of the garlic was all upside down because it was easier to push it down that way. The second one was not clearly labeling the Chilean nitrate and the boron.
Oh,
yeah.
That's a long-term problem.
That was a 2-year problem in a very expensive greenhouse. So thankfully, it was only on one row because they ran out really quick and came and wondered why.
Oh, man.
But we didn't make that one again.
Yeah, I mean, there could be bigger and smaller ones. And you know, it was a really good example this year of how I've been managing those kind of situations when mistakes happen and the crews were letting them make that mistake. And this year, for example, that we were cleaning out the greenhouse, starting to get ready to plant some winter salanova or like some fall salanova. And in the morning meeting, I shared, we need to just save these violas over here because we're still going to do edible flowers for a month. And it was kind of like cash in the bank at that point. Mm-hmm. All these violas are going crazy and everyone else who sells edible flowers is all kind of dying out. And we have this greenhouse crop that's doing awesome. Sure enough, they just all got ripped out, you know?
Yeah.
Like it was like, we're cleaning out the greenhouse, let's clean it out. And it's obvious, it's totally normal that mistake would happen. And there was a difference in the way I handled it that I might not have handled it 5 years ago. And that was really taking a breath and really just not like, what's the big deal? It's not a big deal at all, you know, and letting it go because it's not worth that feeling. That feeling could easily create a mood in me that could last way longer than I want it to. And I don't want to live that way. I want to be joyful. And, and I kind of, again, another weird segue that I've been sort of thinking about lately is, you know how like the old time farmers, right? Like the guys who you meet, been around a long time. There's kind of really two types, I'll be honest with you. I mean, maybe this is being too general. There's the one that laughs a lot, you know, laughs all the time. Like the farmer's just always laughing. And there's one that's really bitter and really mean. And I think that's because there's such an incredible pressure on farmers that there's really actually in the end of the road, two places you can go, right? You're either going to go down the bitter road or the joyful road if you're a farmer when you're 60 or 70. So I want to go the joyful road. And if I keep getting stressed about stuff and freak out and get upset, I'm going down the bitter road, you know?
No, okay. So 2 points on that. The first one is my mentors, Paul and Sandy Arnold. You may have met them in the past, but they are, Sandy's a little bit more reserved, but Paul is one of those who's definitely laughing a lot. And some of it might be laughing at you. You made a stupid mistake. But he is, you know, if you're on the farm, you will commonly just hear him laughing because he's gotten that point of, hey, you messed up. Well, you know what? That's okay. We'll figure it out somehow. And then the flip side of that, some of those farmers who, like, you know, are like having a bad time, they're just, you know, over there. They won't tell you anything about what they're doing. They're, you know, they won't let you come to their farm because they're afraid you're going to steal all their secrets, and they're just bitter. And I think it all comes back to that aspect of the scarcity or abundance mentality. If you are a scarcity mentality, everything's, you know, going wrong for you and the world's about to end. But if you have that abundance mentality, it allows you to, A, be open to receive new ideas and new opportunities, but also to share. Because if you feel like there's an abundance of enough for everybody, then you're going to just have that happy, you know, carefree, just joyful attitude.
Yeah, that's great. I love that, Michael. That's awesome. I totally agree.
It's definitely been something I've had to work on. But I've got a little card actually on my wall that I look at every single day. It's got the difference between, it's called scarcity and then the abundance forest.
Awesome.
Yeah,
I love
so
it.
that really helps. To that point, who are your mentors?
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, I've never been a big learner of, for agriculture at least, through books. I tend to really learn in conversation and dialogue. And so I'd have to actually say that my fellow farmer peers are probably my greatest mentors. The conversations where we discuss our failures and talk about our successes and share our successes is where I've learned the most. Yeah, I guess that would be the honest truth. And the many conversations I've had have been invaluable. That really plays into that idea that, and there's fantastic, don't get me wrong, there's incredible farmers out there, amazing things that they've done. They're also working with the the eco-psychology, if you may, of their land. So they're hopefully, and probably the ones that are really successful, are really listening to what the land is telling them and what is needed in that particular geographic region that they're located. And that will hopefully dictate what their beautiful farm will become. And so to have a farm formula that sort of says this is how you do a successful farm is probably it's great. They're little tips and tricks and they're fantastic. But the depth of it all really comes from the fact that we're all have an opportunity to be unique on our own little farmiverses, and learning from that.
To that point, if there was a magic reset button as it relates to starting your farm, what would you change?
Okay, so the reset button. Oh man, it's so weird to go back in the past, eh? I would say, I'd say a labor plan. So like in the early years, it was like, oh yeah, you want to help on the farm? Yeah, sure. Okay, we can't really pay you right now. I'll pay you in vegetables. Let's get you out here. Like maybe not thinking of it like a business so much and thinking of it, I mean, it wasn't thought of as a business in the early years. It was just like, we're just growing food. Let's just figure this out. And starting to recognize that we need a comprehensive labor plan that pays people in an equitable way or a fair wage. It keeps them around longer, because in the early years when you're just sort of doing woofing style or internship style, it's hard to keep people around. I think I could have kept more people from those years. I have no regrets, by the way, but still, I have people from those years stick around, and it would have probably propelled our farm a little quicker into being more efficient. So that would have avoided a little more chicken head cut off running around a bit.
So kind of like the pro-employee mentality.
Yes. I guess I haven't heard that it termed in that way before, but
yeah. So actually, that was a coinage, I think, from my one of the previous guests on the podcast, Jordan Green, who farms animals down in Virginia area, and he kind of coined that word, is that he would rather have 3 pro-employees than a dozen interns.
Bingo. Yes, exactly. That's same page.
Yeah. So you farm with a lot of help. You said you 15 people. How do you divide those roles?
Yeah, so that's always evolved depending on skill set of the people on the farm, because it's not always easy to get the exact, okay, here's our job position. Let's find that person, put it out there. Oh, that guy actually is really good at tractors, like really good at mechanics. Okay, let's adjust his position a little bit. But generally we do have positions on the farm, but they do evolve and change. So do you want me to run through them a little bit?
Sure, yeah.
So greenhouse, starting our seedlings, we have somebody who holds that position. So that would be the greenhouse manager. We have somebody else who's kind of the hub manager. So that's the one who holds the cold room and the packing station and washing veggies and processing all of that and getting stuff ready for deliveries. We have somebody who is the harvest manager. So he would be, it's he this year, would be out in the field managing harvest, managing numbers, making sure it's all getting in okay and in a timely way. We also have an irrigation person who would also kind of maybe be the hub manager if it works. They would sort of share a role there. We do have animals on the farm. So there's someone who is managing the animals and usually doing something else too. Actually, our transplant manager is also our animal manager this year, which kind of had to evolve and change. We have someone who holds all transplants. And the reason for these different roles, there's also people who do, there's also the fermenting kitchen, because we do the sauerkraut as well. So there's that. And there's also the farm store manager too, who holds that space. The reason it works so well putting everybody in these roles is that I then don't need to go and communicate to everybody what's happening, or the relationship begins to build, let's say between the transplant manager and the seed starting manager. Okay, you guys need to talk together and communicate what's ready, what's being hardened off, and really communicating to the transplant manager where it is and which ones to take first, etc. So that would be an example of like, all right, these two are going to get close, and they're going to get closer and closer so that communication becomes awesome. And if there's a breakdown in communication, then they can talk to me and we can figure it out together. So that's why the departments are so key. there's another position too, is the field kind of maintenance, we call it. So that's row covering, hooping, kind of has an eye on the weed pressure. It's such a small role, that one. Like, I mean, it sounds so small, that one, but it's so big, you know, like, oh my God, the row cover person, I have so much respect for them. She does a great job this year. So having those various departments be able to hold that specific thing. Then, so if there's an issue with something, I can just go to that particular person and communicate it to them. And if they're like, well, this is working, but I need some more support for my hoop racks. Like, it's just a mess. My hoops are everywhere. I'm not going to get her to build a rack because it might take her 4 times longer. I'm going to get my infrastructure guy. That's another role we have he's the harvest manager and infrastructure manager, same guy. Okay. And I'll be like, okay, I'll get him to build you a hoop rack, and let's see how high of a priority is that. Okay, and then I put it on his list, and he's like, great, I'll get to it after I'm done this, and this. So whenever there's a problem that one person is experiencing, I don't try to solve it. I try to find the person in the best position to solve it or to work with them on it. So I'm looking at it like a bit of an orchestra and being the conductor of something that can ease. Well, actually, no, that's not a good example for that. It's more putting people in touch with other people, you know, to get the job done.
So finding people can always be a challenge. I mean, I'm hearing more this year than any year of how challenging getting good people is. How do you find those right people?
Oh yeah, that's fascinating that you're hearing that too. I've been hearing, we've had that experience in a way. We're very lucky that we've had a pretty solid team return this year, and we have them coming back next year. One strategy we're doing, we're going to go forward with next year, is actually have a core staff. So the core team I have now, who really hold responsibilities, who get a decent wage and are going to always get an increase every year as they take on more responsibility, and really empowering them and having a really tight group with this team, even to the point where maybe they're the only ones at the morning meetings. And because we have such a high labor need from June, July, and August here, fall too, but we'll get to that in a sec, but the really high labor hits in those 3 months. And that's when all the students are available. So there's some grant programs available in Canada that we've started to use and access for students. One of them is actually by the UN. It's a United Nations program called Green Spaces. And there's another one called it's a Canadian grant. It's called Eco Canada grant. So it's for jobs that are kind of helping push back the carbon footprint. So an organic vegetable farm is a good place to encourage that, you know? So these kids would be coming out of school, actually have to be in school, and they would come and live on our farm. And we have some on-farm accommodation that's really suitable for those 3 months without it getting too cold, and have them live on the farm and really be our labor need, like overstaff it, get like 5 of them, you know, to fill that whole space. And we shift a little bit more that the core team is kind of, in a way, running a camp, like thinking about it like that. So we all talk about, okay, maybe this person would be better suited for that job in the morning. Like, we don't all meet so that we can manage that team better and get them where they need to go. And they don't have to think about all the managerial stuff. They just think about, oh, I need to pick beans right now. Oh, I need to do this. And they're here for 3 months. So it's an experience. There's a good likelihood they're not going to quit. It's a short enough stint that you won't lose them mid-season, I'm thinking. So we're going to try that strategy.
Very cool. And with that, I'd like to stop here and take a break. In a minute, we'll be back with Alex from Juniper Farm.
If you've been enjoying this episode so far, you're going to want to head over to growingfarmers.com/free resources and download our free resource bundle to help you shave hours off your week and become a thriving farmer. In this resource bundle, you're going to find an ebook on winter growing. We have an ebook called The Profitable Farmer's Toolkit, which has been downloaded by literally thousands of farmers from around the world. And you're going to find our ebook called Building Your Farm, 6 Key Characteristics of the Right Property. And so in that e-guide, you'll find what soil types to look for in your farm, how to figure out where to buy your farm based on local weather patterns, what types of road to try to locate your farm on so that it doesn't limit the growth of your farm, and why it's better to buy 10 acres closer to the city than 1,000 acres further away. So head on over to growingfarmers.com/free resources and download your free resource bundle today.
All right, we are back with Alex from Juniper Farm. Alex, let's talk about your marketing. Where do you focus on selling?
Yeah, so our main marketing up until this point ran CSA was sort of the first way we started selling vegetables, and this is our first year not doing a CSA after 13 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's been a great move for us in allowing us to focus. We had maybe too many hands in different pots, and it definitely showed that, okay, it's all right. Yeah, it was a bit scary without the cash flow, because that's what CSA is, one of the main advantages, is getting your upfront cash flow sorted. And so we did have to take, we did run into the credit line, and I think we're just crawling out of it right now. But as far as income being generated on the farm, we're at par. We're not necessarily $150,000 less because we don't have a CSA. And it just goes to show the power of focus. So that was a big change for us. So now our main focus is restaurants, retail clients, our farm store on site, and some other possibilities that we're exploring and actually actively beginning right now is a collective of farmers locally called Farmhouse Foods. And we are all going to collectively come together and start offering food to our local region, maybe a little bit like a CSA, but probably a little more custom, custom box style. Yep. And we're doing a launch for a harvest box in November that sort of a one-time, you can get, a $175 box, and it's filled with everything from meat to cheese to vegetables from these 6 farms, so that they can get to know us. And we're really excited to go into this new collective way of marketing together and not having to be one farm holding all the logistics of a CSA, which we know all too well, and having to grow every single crop for the CSA. So I think it'll be exciting.
Very cool. All right. So talk to me a little bit about your crop mix now, because you dropped the CSA. Did that mean you dropped some crops to focus more on what was the best, or are you still doing that same variety?
We still have quite a bit of variety, but yeah, we have dropped some crops for sure. Certain things that don't sell, I find we don't get a big sale for restaurants and retail, we decided to drop. So things like broccoli, cauliflower, I mean, yes, they're actually quite sellable to restaurants. Don't get me wrong on that, but I think we all know they're very challenging crops to grow. And we ran into some really heavy botrytis issues here on the farm. It was it wasn't even worth growing that stuff. So we've taken a break on those crops. We have taken a break on potatoes and garlic as well. I don't have a huge market for potatoes and garlic as well. We'll grow some for just our farm store, but the amount we used to grow, which was like 20,000, because it was primarily for the CSA, we don't grow anymore. Gotcha.
Now, the on-farm store, how do you drive traffic to that?
Well, it's been growing since we moved. We've had 2 farms, one 30 minutes north of where we are now, and now this one. So since we moved to this closer one that's closer to the village and closer to Ottawa, we have had a kind of honor system style cabin that people used to come to, and now we fully renovated our old farmhouse that we lived in and turned it into a commercial kitchen with a farm store. So it's been evolving for a while, and actually our new house that we built with we live with my parents too on the farm, and then my family. We actually built it right by the little cabin where all the vegetables were for many years. And it's been almost 5 years since we haven't done it. And they still get people driving into that little cabin. And there's our bikes and our ski equipment in it. And they're like, "Oh, I thought there was vegetables here." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you haven't been back in 5 years? Go down to the farm store." So traffic, I'd say social media has been helping us a lot. We're only 30 minutes from Ottawa, which is the capital city of Canada. So we get a decent amount of traffic, but it's been slow. It's slow and steady. And this year we've seen, I'd say, a critical jump. And again, I think that has a lot to do with focus. Like if we're focusing only on many things, it would be hard to, get our signage right and get our kind of target audience knowing what's happening. And so we've really actually grown our market a lot this year for the store, and a lot more people are coming. Few strategies we've done are getting on our mail list, which is only getting bigger now, especially because we had all those CSA members on it too, that we can offer, it's basil season. Great, come on up, get your 5-pound bag of basil, make pesto, or it's Roma tomato season. Come get your tomatoes. it's amazing how many people pre-order and come up here. And if they've never heard of our farm, now they know, or they buy that and tons of other stuff when they come. So getting them here for a reason is really important.
Interesting. So then when they come, do you try to let them make a day of it? Do you offer like some picnic tables, or can they tour the farm? How does that work?
Yeah, you got it. So we have picnic tables, and we want to evolve into more prepared foods, but we just have to take one step at a time. Yes, there's picnic tables there. We do have dried sausage and cheeses, and so people can grab stuff, and we have drinks, and there's definitely, it's not fully prepared foods, but there is things that they can eat outside. We have a self-guided tour. So it's a little map, and they can walk through the fields on the weekends when there's people. We try not to do it when people are in the tractors are going about and our buggies running around. So on the weekends, they're welcome to walk through the farm, check out the veggies, check out the pigs that are out there and the chickens, and just feel the landscape. And we're in some beautiful hills here. So this time of year with all the leaves changing, it's just on the weekends it's slammed. This Thanksgiving it's Canadian Thanksgiving, so we'll be really packed with people having a day of it. Exactly what you said. Very
cool. All right, let's talk about the ferment business more. How did that start?
That's a good story. I was really, in those early years when we had just a 1 acre garden, and it was just myself and Juniper, and that was it, the two of us working the farm. I would always look at everything and be like, that's worth something there. I can't just leave that little piece of lettuce, or that little head of lettuce over there. That's $3, even though we'd cleared that bed. So I kind of had that mentality of not waste an inch. And the first farm we had was much tighter on space. So I really got into that mentality. And you're probably like, how's he going to get to the ferments? But it all came down to cracked cabbage. Okay. One time we had all our cabbage out there, and just the chaos of trying to get the harvest in on time didn't happen. Got a lot of rain, and a lot of our cabbage started to crack. And once it's cracked, it doesn't store well, as we know, and it also doesn't present well. So we just thought, what are we going to do with this cracked cabbage? And Juniper loves cooking and creating whatever she can. And then she's like, well, let's start making some sauerkraut with it. Like, yeah, of course, we'll do that for us. And it just grew really, really gradually. And we use all ceramic crocks. And we never stopped doing that. We never went to plastic tubs. We've stayed with ceramic crocks, and we just keep buying more and more. I think we have almost 60, whatever they are, 20 liter ceramic crocks now. And as we grow, we just do more of those. And the quality of the kraut really shows it, and it's a wild ferment. So we just grew and grew and grew. And now we grow, whatever, half an acre of cabbage, or maybe a little less than half an acre of cabbage, to try to do all of our fermenting needs for the season. We can't always do it, but we try.
Very cool. And what variety of cabbage do you prefer for the kraut?
We actually don't have a big enough cold storage to have kraut to last us till the spring, cabbage to last us till the spring. And we like to do a fresh kraut, so we make it every week fresh, but not fresh, but every week let it ferment for 3 weeks, and then jar up and let it. We don't make a huge batch and put it in the fridge and sell it for 6 months, because that's how some of the bigger guys do it.
Okay.
And so in that scenario, we aren't looking for long storage cabbage. We're looking for fast growing, nice cabbage. So we get the Murdoch and the Caraflex, those ones, the pointy ones.
Oh, interesting.
They work the best.
I never knew that. I'm growing Caraflex, but I didn't know that would be, and that's what we're using it for now, because my wife does a lot of sauerkraut herself. And that's what we're going to be eating, the sauerkraut this year. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah, and it works. The Caraflex is nice because it comes on quick, so you get an early cabbage, so we can start using our own as soon as possible. And then the Murdoch, the Murdoch is the big pointy one, right?
Yeah, it gets huge.
The really big one. Yeah. So that the Murdoch then is our kind of fall storage cabbage. And then that stores, usually we can push it till about January, but at that point, if I don't have storage space to keep anything past January anyways, so... Yeah, that's it.
Very cool. Very cool. What would you feel is the biggest mistakes that you see beginning farmers making?
I would say trusting and knowing you will make many mistakes. So, and that those mistakes can be opportunities for growth and not just despair. And I think there's kind of and I'm sure I had it too, and that's probably what got me going in the early years, is just sort of a headstrong idea that this is the way. Oh no, I'm going to make $200,000 on my acre. It's going to happen. And not trusting that, yeah, you can follow that formula all you want, but there's so much to learn. And having that humility to enter in that way, it will breed success. Yeah, and that comes back to my whole thing that we were talking about before, which is it takes a whole year to watch a mistake, and you only have so many years. It's a long time to watch a mistake.
Yeah. That's why you label all your tags too.
yeah, pretty much. Yes, very important.
Yes. Is there anything that new farmers should avoid their first year?
Yeah, I'd say don't introduce too many crops at once. I think I did that. Yeah, that kind of sucked.
Yeah.
Too much happening at once, not learning enough about them and being like, yeah, okay, great. I got, edamame. What the heck? I'd only get edamame for like 2 weeks. Why did we grow edamame? Just giving yourself that time to learn the crop slowly and introduce them slower rather than do everything in the first year.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, how I try to look at it is actually there's a dreaming stage. And then to me, the dreaming stage is before you actually try to make money at anything. They just kind of do it on the side. And in that dreaming stage, I actually recommend they try as many crops as possible where there's no financial anything being tied to growing those, just so they can experience it. And then when you're in the beginning stage, you move into where you actually, okay, we're actually doing this for reals. That is when you really pare down. And as you said, do what works and then add a few every year or so.
Yeah, and I think if you have that freedom to be able to do that and have a kind of trial year, that's awesome. I think in our scenario, we had this opportunity to acquire a farm, and there we are. We have a mortgage. We just bought all this equipment. Okay, we got to do this. Like we have to make some money.
So you skipped that dreaming stage.
No, sorry. We actually did it in the same year. That's what I'm saying. It was a mistake. Okay. We dreamed and went for trying to make as much money as possible. And it was successful. A bit of a burnout, and we got married that year too. And then on our wedding day, I remember it was the first frost, and we lost a whole bunch of stuff.
Oh wow!
But it was in hindsight, it's a wonderful romantic memory. But I think that it could have been mitigated a little bit.
Yeah. If you could pick one, what would be your favorite farming tool?
Well, I'd have to say the spader is something I feel really dear to heart, and it is such an integral part in our operation. Basically, if that thing breaks, which is pretty hard to break, but if it did break, I would go and have to order one from Italy and spend a lot of money on it, and I would do it. I would easily just get the loan if I had to do it. So yes, I find that tool is integral to what our farm is trying to achieve for the soil systems and for our biodynamic principles. And I'd say the other one is the harvest board I was telling you about. Without that, I'd be a mess. It's really cleaned up a really challenging part of the farm and given a lot more freedom in that automation.
Absolutely. Back to the spader. Does that have a finishing roller on the back, or how's it set up?
It doesn't. That would be neat actually to put a roller on it, but I haven't necessarily had to. It sort of has a flip lid, kind of like how a rotor tiller does. And so if you position the spader on your on your top link as far back, not as far back, but further back, so that flap is hitting the ground. And when the soil's getting flipped up, it hits the back panel and then drops down and kind of creates a bit of a smooth bed so that your seeder can actually seed. If you were to go down, sometimes if it's a bit wetter or whatnot, you were to go down and dig with your hand, you'll see there's chunks under there. Like there is actual like chunks and little activity of life. It's not all tilth. Like it's not all just powder. Which I like. I'm okay with that. Once the plant is germinated and starting to send roots down, as long as there's not massive air pockets, it's going to be fine. And then and those chunks are life. Like they're just going to spread life 10 times faster than tilth, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No, that's cool. Where can people find more about you and your work?
I'm pretty active on Instagram. So I have it's Juniper_Farm. We have our website, but we're redoing it right now. So that's juniperfarm.ca. We're also on Facebook as well. And and then if you live in the Ottawa-Gatineau region, come say hi. I mean, we love having people on the farm, and everyone feels such joy. We even have some farm pets that, we have two mini donkeys and a bunch of silky chickens and Bunwich the pig. Like, we have pals on the farm. Those are mostly for my kids, but it's actually also for every single person that comes here because they love them so much. So if you're in the Ottawa-Gatineau region, come on up to Wakefield and look for us at Juniper Farm.
And you also have an Instagram for your ferments.
That's right. So we have a few, so we have the ferments Instagram as well. So that's Juniper Farm Ferments. You can check that out to just see what we're up to and all the different flavors that we do. Definitely.
Very cool. Well, Alex, it's been a pleasure having you on. Thanks so much. And what ages are your kids? I forgot to ask that.
Yeah, they're 7 and 10, 2 boys. And I think the beauty of the whole thing is, like I had said, I didn't grow up on a farm and only started farming in my 20s. And my kids are farmers. They're full on farmers. And I had a very different youth, growing up in Montreal, skateboarding downtown, just such a different thing. And watching them and the things they learned and the way they're able to figure stuff out and know how to work in the field and know good food. I mean, it's amazing to watch. So it's the changeover, it's a changeover from a non-farmer, myself, to having farm kids. And I try really, really hard to let them feel as open as possible for whatever they'd like to do here. Because as we know, farms have such a possibility, so many possibilities, right? And, if they want to do a maple syrup operation here, by all means. And if they don't want to do anything here, that's fine too. It's just, I really want them to feel open to treating this like a blank canvas as we did.
Absolutely. Well, Alex, again, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. And I'm definitely going to try to make it up your way in the next year or so.
Amazing. Thanks for all your hard work, Michael, and getting this stuff out there.
Oh, yeah, it's my absolute pleasure.
So there you have it, another episode in the books. So I'd love if you would hop on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and a review. Those mean everything to us. We love to hear what you're thinking. If you have a podcast guest that you can recommend, please pop on over